Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. That being the special council meeting in Warwick Township on January 26, 2025. And today's meeting is to deal with the 2025 budget. I'll remind council of disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Does anybody have one at this time?
I have a conflict.
Councilor or Deputy Mayor Kallenberg?
I have a conflict with the first delegation.
Good, thank you, sir. I'm also going to welcome everybody who's joining us through the Warwick Township YouTube link. Welcome. And now I'm going to do the acknowledgement of ancestral lands. We acknowledge that the Township of Warwick is located on traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, as well as the many Indigenous nations in Ontario whose footsteps have marked them for centuries. We also wish to acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 29 and Treaty 25 territories signed by Chippewa chiefs, and we offer our respect and gratitude for these lands. Council, I'm going to go to number 5 on the agenda, and that's councillor comments and commitment dates. We'll do commitment dates first, 5A. Does anybody have anything they wish to add to the list at this particular time? Seeing none, thank you. What about councillors' items? We'll start with you, Councillor Manning. Do you have anything for today?
I have nothing today. Thank you.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Kallenberg.
I have nothing today.
Councillor Westgate.
I have nothing today either.
Councillor Morris.
I have nothing today either.
Okay. I just have a couple things. Some of us had the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Infrastructure yesterday, to a matter of fact. And the good news is there's a new program that's going to be announced. That's actually was announced yesterday. So it's through the Ministry of Infrastructure, and it's really $175 million when it comes to health and safety, water stream, when it comes to the province's issues with infrastructure, which part of it actually covers extreme weather events. So I just wanted to let the public know that there's $175 million opportunity out there. Obviously, we would not get it all, but we will be working on trying to get some of those funds. God knows we've experienced enough weather events for a lifetime the last 2 years. The other thing I just wanted to point out that Mr. Fleck, the Minister of Agriculture, is announced the other day that there'll be an additional funding of $18 million over 3 years to the agricultural drainage infrastructure program, which again could help us in a very big way when we look at our interconnection of drains and how the former village of Watford drains into them. So these are very timely for us. And I'm sure that our staff will look at this. We've already talked to the MPP's office. Actually, this information came from Steve's office today, and we appreciate that. And I also wanted to say Steve was very supportive. MPP Pinsonneau was very supportive while we were down at the Roma conference and having those discussions. We also met with the Minister of Rural Affairs, Lisa Thompson. It was supposed to be a very short meeting, which turned into a lot longer meeting. We really were heard, and we appreciate their time. So that is all I have today, Council. Staff items. Do we have any verbal staff items today? I know we're going to get into a much bigger subject led by our treasurer here in a few minutes. Nothing at all. Thank you, Mr. Van Horn. So we have a delegation today. We have one delegation. It's 7A, and it's Alphonse Kallenberg. Alphonse, would you please join us up front here? And Alphonse is here today to talk to us about consideration of other alternatives for the sump pump disconnect and backwater installation grant program. So Alphonse has asked to speak to us. It's very timely that we're into budget. So we'll get Alphonse set up, and whenever you're ready, Alphonse, you may begin.
Good day. I looked into this program, and it says on the program, it says sewer backup. Now, we have no sewer, but we have water backup. And myself, I spent $5,000 to put a pit outside to prevent the sewer backup. So all what I'm asking is to change the wording in that paper. That's what I'm asking for, and then we can apply for it.
So really what you're saying is to broaden the program to include, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Alphonse, you put one of those, what they call an outdoor sump pump in, am I correct?
I put a an outdoor sump pump in. I put one of those pits in, 11 feet deep. All my drains from around the house and from outside are going into that, and I got 2 sewer pumps that pump 1,600 gallons an hour in there to get rid of the water. And I'm getting all the water from Warwick Street coming to my place.
So does everybody understand the technology that Alphonse is talking about? It's been around for quite some time. Does anybody have any questions or inquiries on exactly the system or how it may work at this time? It's something we can talk about when we go through deliberations with the budget. Anybody have any other questions for Alphonse? See none? Hey, anything else you'd like to add, Alphonse?
That's my concern is about it. Like, I applied for that, but then they said, what's the sewer backup? And it's supposed to say a water backup too.
Okay, so you're looking for us, as I said, to maybe look at maybe potentially broadening the scope of what maybe we'd be able to help with financially to the
Yes.
residents. Very
Yes,
good,
sir.
sir. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Any other questions for our delegation at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much, Alphonse.
Thank
We'll
you.
be in touch. Oh, pardon me, Jerry, did you have a question? 1 second, Alphonse, maybe we have.
Oh, not really. I don't have a question. This would really broaden the scope of that whole project we had for backflow preventers. And so it would cost a lot of money for the town, I think. We also have other problems, like down where you are, the houses up to the east of you, where maybe we're gonna have to look at getting, see if we can't get neighbors together and put drains in and take the water away. I don't know. I've talked to a couple of councils about this, and I hope we're gonna look at getting a program together that,
Well, right now, Jerry, my phone just got off. For the simple reason I had 3 times in 1 year. And if it happen again, no. $50,000, I can't afford $50,000 damage. Like I had $58,000 the first time and 42,000 second time.
yeah, I know, I had mine twice, once sewer, once storm. But the town was more worried about the sewage backup in town when we put that program in. And because our sewers were filled up and backing in, so
The water was back.
the water backed up, but that's supposed to be taken care of by sump pumps and put back out. And I know in your case, I know the drainage was changed, and there's a lot of houses in town where we would.
Like, when I came there, when I bought that house, I redid the whole works around the house. And what I got, when I had the tractor with the rotor where I run into, 2 catch bases. Piece of plywood on top of it and that much dirt. Who did that?
Maybe if I can, we are getting into this budget process. Mr. Kallenberg has come and made a request that we look at this as part of the scope. So I would suggest maybe we do that. We do have a lot in this budget when it comes to drainage and doing work to improve our situation. But at the same time, we will consider what you've asked today. And we will definitely get back to you, sir. At the same time, like I say, there's lots in this budget to try to obviously look at our situation, to try to improve things. When you get 100-year rains, we all know it's very difficult, but we do have that. So thank you very much, Mr. Kallenberg. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, council, we're going to get into staff reports, and that staff report today is the budget. And what I'm going to do at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Trevor Jarrett, our Treasurer Deputy CAO, for his presentation, and then we can start to deliberate on the content of the actual budget itself. Trevor, if you'd be so kind.
Thank you, Mayor Case. My presentation is going to be brief, but I'm going to open the floor once I get through my presentation to hopefully go through tab by tab in the budget so that any questions can be asked of the right manager or myself, so we have this resolved and move forward. Next slide, please. From the initial presentation, we've had 4 changes and they aren't significant. The first one is the reallocation of the OPP adjustments. When it was first coming out, we didn't know how they would hit. Now it's going to hit within one bill and it's all within Department 225. So that's a zero sum gain.
Excuse me, Trevor, can I get you and Stephanie to trade off microphones? Some reason the camera's not picking it up or picking up Stephanie. I don't think Stephanie wants to deliver the budget today. I'm sure she's capable, but I don't think that's something she wants to do. Thank you very much.
Is this any better? Okay, sorry about that.
There you go.
Okay, so back to the changes. There's the reallocation of OPP, which is zero sum gain. It's one department to another, same dollar. There's also an additional 2,000 tons of gravel that's been requested. That is to do some experimentation on increasing one road base to make it more passable. And if it works, it's going to be additional calcium, additional gravel to hopefully stop the rutting later in the year. And it's going to be a test market that is being engineered in conjunction with our Public Works Department and streets. And for that price, I think it's a good investment to see whether or not it's going to work. And the last one is actually capital. When the ELCC was built, we thought we had it perfect. We never have everything perfect. There's no sink in the ELCC bar area, and instead they have to access the kitchen back and forth. The kitchen should be locked. So it's to put a sink into the bar area so there's actually cleaning and everything and proper hygiene handling materials there for everything. So that's the 4 requests and changes that we've had.
If I could just interrupt for a second, when you talked about the extra gravel, I just want to be specific to what road we're talking about. And that is the east side of Brickyard line is where that extra gravel would go. Am I correct, Kyle?
Yes, we're gonna attempt this at Beat Brickyard. We're gonna do a second run on that road later in the season and add more calcium to it to see if we can firm up the base on that road because it seems to be subject to high loads during the year.
Sorry to mean to interrupt, but I
Nope.
just thought clarification. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you.
Next slide, please. In our original notes, we're going to be drawing 286,000 from reserves to cover the budget shortfall at 5% tax increase. We're not going to ask for any more. We're not going to ask for anything less. It's based on the fact that whatever is last year's tax increase is what I come back with in the next one and look for council direction to go one way or the other. A 1% tax increase represents $30,000 to this municipality. So 5% is roughly 153,000. Next slide, please. There's my capital budget notes. We've spoken about the ELCC. The second one is in the first project work, we had the Nauvoo Confederation Road project, which is a co-sponsored project with the County of Lambton. We've spoken to the county and asked them to defer to 2026 due to the tightness that we have with other projects that have competing factors here. They have agreed to it. The one thing that we will see, and you'll see it on the next regular council meeting, is we have paid for the engineering for that in 2024. So engineering is paid for, it's ready to go. It's just that we've asked for it to be on hold. Next slide, please. We've also added in 3 additional public works projects, and we'll get to the final true-up eventually. These represent Arcona Road, the overpass and approach. The condition of it subsided more so than was expected. There's 4 catch basins in the municipality that need to be reworked at the recommendation of Public Works. And since they're the ones fielding the calls, it probably makes more sense to listen to them. And then there is a box culvert that's on First School Road, which falls underneath the size that's required for the biannual inspection. So this has probably needed repairs for probably 20 years. It's now been brought to our attention. We've got it in there. We've got a price for it. I think it'll be in the notes. It's $70,000, I believe, or $47,000. We will get to it further. Projects not included in the recommendation list that we will get to eventually will go back into the backlog and be incorporated into the 20-year capital plan. This will be brought forward and highlighted with the roads tour later in 2025 in preparation for the 2026 draft budget. And there will be significant engineering occurring on the intersection of Egremont in Warwick Village because there's water collection significant there. And it's not a true line of sight intersection. There are some compromises there that would be in our best interest to work out and invest the dollars to straighten. Next slide, recreational. We've recommended that 2 projects move forward this year for Parks and Rec. The first one is the ice resurfacer. It's coming to the end of life. However, still coming to the end of life, we probably have a 12 to 18 month window before we get the replacement. So we have to have enough money in there for Parks and Rec staff to initiate the contract to order it. We have to have that in place. So that's the request, is the portion that we're going to need as a down payment. The second one is the modular all-wheel skate park. It's aligned to 2 grant applications that require work be completed within 24 months of approval. If the grant applications are successful, we will readdress funding prior to commencing any work on this project. Embedded in that project is also the accessibility playground work. The accessibility playground is one that actually has 2 grants, but by carrying this one, if you got the larger project in there and you only get the grant for the smaller one, we should have enough money at least to do one of those 2 projects. But as the accessibility playground is part of the modular skate park, if we got both, we'll be sitting fine. So we've gone conservative on this as we need to be. So our next thing is based on where we've gone, our future capital projects. 2025, there's 3 other capital projects that are brought forward in this budget. Everything else related to that is going to be put into future years, 2026 or beyond. 2026 will also see new requests for capital for Parks and Rec coming in for playground equipment upgrade and Centennial Park, the splash pad renewal. I would anticipate sometime during the year, and I'm probably putting Ryan a little bit on the spot here, to see more of a formalized plan and design coming forth on the splash pad so it can start being worked on, because it's not going to be a simple come to budget, here's what we need for it. It's going to be a cooperative project with the community, so it's designed properly and fit the needs and with the Parks and Rec master plan. 2027 and beyond, new projects will including of a park pathway trail loop, ELCC outdoor kitchen, gathering space improvements, and Centennial Park shelter improvements. And finally, we're getting to the end of life and need renewal at the Watford Arena on hot water and furnaces. I believe there's 3 furnaces that service the arena, and they are staggered. In total, between minor and capital recommendation that we have put forward, it's $4.8 million. The next slide tells you how we plan on funding it. Post fees, 2.5 million. OCIF formula, we get 604,000. Gas tax, which is CCBF, we got $119,000. Sewer reserves, because there's a couple of specific sewer projects, we can pull that from their specific reserve for 585. Culvert, 138,000 is 2024 financing. And fire rescue vehicle, we have $200,000 in funding that we will be pulling from a reserve that was built up in 2024 from the savings that we had on the fire hall, and also what was put away from the increased taxes. And also council request to put 75,000 in reserve. And then the balance will be coming from general reserves of 666,000. That is my presentation. Before we go any further with our recommended list, I would rather open the floor right now and go through it on a tab by tab basis so that council can ask their questions before any further deliberations are made.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Trevor for what he's presented thus far before we get into the further into the book. So somebody besides Wayne to start us off, perhaps? Deputy Mayor.
I asked you a while back about what we paid in carbon tax, and last year it was most 0.5% of our tax rate, so 15,000, yeah, so but we're gonna see another increase in April, I believe. So has that impact shared in this budget as well or not?
Is not specifically identified. It will be in this, in the expenses to this budget, and we are anticipating it to probably be over 1% where it's going to.
Further questions, Deputy Mayor? Councillor Manning, did you have anything at this point in time?
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Westgate.
Just to follow up on that carbon tax, that's just what we pay. That's not what we pay on our bills for heating and stuff, because we'll pay a lot more than that just in the carbon tax to heat the new complex.
We have to identify what is on those, and it's an ongoing project. And it's something that we've reached back out to get. What we did on straight on fuel purchases is the 15,000, but I will be following up on a further report throughout the year as we get that identified. But you're correct.
So even at my place, I think it was 70,000 or $70 last week, and that's just for a house for last month.
Anything further, Councillor Westgate, this time before I turn it over to Councillor Morris?
Go ahead and turn it on.
Councillor Morris, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Trevor, first of all, Ryan hasn't mentioned, I would like to add $5,000 onto the recreational budget for electrical. We've had a lot of complaints with the electrical in the hall blowing breakers. And I noticed there was nothing in there on that, so that is one suggestion. The other question is, I guess, when we went on our road tour, the Arcona overpass was all ditted up the side rails from car accidents. Now, do we get any kind of report when there's a car accident damaging township property? If so, we should be going after the insurance companies of those vehicles to make repairs. I think that would help us a lot. That's the second thing.
Councillor, that would be a question for Kyle, right?
Yes, for Kyle.
And maybe Ray as well. Ray is here with
Yeah,
us.
because Ray took us on the tour, which
Yeah.
was great.
Both of them gave us. the tour.
The other question is for Ryan. You've requested a Zamboni electric one. Right now we have Olympia propane. What is the difference in cost for the Olympia versus the Zamboni? Are we going from a Chevrolet to a Cadillac? Or can you explain that, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Morris. They're actually rather similar in cost. Only a slight increase to purchase the EV unit. So there's really not that much difference in purchasing a propane unit that we currently have as opposed to the EV. The EV unit that we're proposing, the price also includes the fast charging pack and all the electrical work that would come with that sort of switch over. I could probably note here as well on the Zamboni, we currently spend about 5,000, just over 5,000 a year annually on propane. So we would eliminate that cost as well.
Anything else for now, Councillor Morris?
I'll wait as we carry on.
Okay, I will turn it over to the treasurer again to take us through the pages. Floor is yours, Trevor.
Thank you. Tab 1 is the budget summary. My recommendation going forward is this is done with a delivery date for December meeting. So we have 3 tabs in there: 2024 actual, 2024 budget, 2025 budget. You will always see a variance in there because the actual, it's not finished. Our year won't finish until probably the end of February when we close our books. I would like to include going forward the prior year to that. So then you have a full year comparison and a partial year so that there's more granularity. And if council agrees with that, that's going to be a change that you'll see coming forward in next year's budget. That'll be the same. That will go through all three reports on that. Next, we have county taxes. Pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing there. It just shows us relative to everyone else where we sit. Still the lowest. We're 1.62% lower than the average, or pardon me, 62% lower than the average and 106% lower than the highest. So there's a lot of money there. Next tab is our debt servicing by unit and component and where we're going. As you will see, it's jumped up in the last 2 years. That's to cover the ELCC. And the next tab is reserves. And this is as of December 31st projected, and unencumbered reserves of $5.3 million, encumbered are 9.6.
So I'm going to ask a question when it comes to the debt servicing of the ELCC, and we've had this discussion. And I know this question's not going to surprise you, Trevor. For what we ended up locking the financing in as an interest rate compared to where we are now, there's been some shift, some positive shift for us. I guess I'm going to ask your opinion. Is now the time to renegotiate? I don't know what it is exactly. Is it around $8 million that we still owe?
We're about 7.7 now.
So about 7 point something. So again, with the shift in interest rates and knowing that the interest we're paying is very hefty, I think it's over $400,000 a year just in interest, which is crazy money. Is now the time, in your opinion, to go and look at other avenues to refinance the facility? Anytime you could save money on interest, it's a good day, and it gives us money to put back into the business in other places. So that's my question for you.
Very quick answer, yes. And it's something that we do on a constant basis. Our last two emails and contacts with alternative funding partners, although the short-term interest rates changed on 1, 2, and 5-year terms, the elasticity in the long term is not happening. It's holding fairly steady, but it's something we monitor. There's supposed to be, I've heard 2 changes coming down, one this month and one probably before the end of Q1. And every time it happens, I reach out to get the current rates. And at the time where I think it's time to strike and we're going to save money, I will be coming to council with that report to make the move.
All right, I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
It takes me to tab 4, general government. Are there any specific questions from council on the general government section? Now I have to read my proper titles. Our next tab is protection, tab 4, which includes 2 fire departments, our OPP costs, bylaw, and like services.
Maybe if you don't mind, Trevor, maybe if we just talk a little bit about the capital asks.
Okay.
When it comes to the fire departments, if we could, as far as policing goes, I don't know if everybody's aware of it. A large increase was pushed upon us in the community when it comes to OPP costs, for which the provincial government reacted in a very positive way and actually gave us a rebate to cover that increase. Otherwise, we'd be in a lot tougher spot coming into this budget. So we did receive a rebate to cover that increase. We also have the deputy mayor that sits on the OPP board for us, representing us. And obviously he's watching that and keeping us abreast of any other changes. So we appreciate that. So anyways, if you wouldn't mind, Trevor, just maybe take us down the capital side of fire, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. On the major capital side for Warwick, it's a rescue vehicle replacement. So there's 600,000 in there for it. When we get to the recommendation, we'll go from there. For Wofford, there's 2 projects. The first one is a rescue vehicle replacement, and also the bathrooms there, if it's a public building, have to be made brought forward to AODA, Accessibility for Disabled Ontario Act standards. They're not. So there's $80,000 in there for that, to bring them up to speed for this point in time. to bring it up to standard for that. If you host events there that are for the public, you have to have it that way, and you should do it sooner than later if that's the plan. On the minor capitals, excuse me. These requests came in as we were writing grants to the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office. And particularly with focus on programs to decrease carcinogens that were going to impact firefighters. So some of the requests are to address that. For Warwick, there's bunker gear. I believe I can be corrected, I think it's 4 sets or 3 sets. 4 gas detectors. And that's just to detect 4 different types of gas at the fire hall. Needs to be replaced. It's 2. Gloves for all firefighters. Again, it's a blanket purchase for all the firefighters. I've been here 8 years. I haven't seen them replaced in 8 years. I will say that. Helmets, again, replace all the helmets. I've been here for 8 years, not seen them replaced. And some scuba or SCBA tanks. I can't answer the number of tanks, but I believe it's 3. That's okay. So that's where.
I'll ask, Chief Goodhill wants to make a comment. I'll ask him to come up and, use the microphone and then everybody can hear it. Chief Goodhill, when you're ready.
Yes, it's just the end of life on the helmets and the gloves, the 10-year date specifications on them for interior firefighting purposes. So that's why they're in the budget for this year. The bunker gear is to create spare sets for allow wash times in between for the carcinogens for the group of firefighters. And the SCBA bottles are a routine replacement. They need to be replaced every 15 years. So we replace a few every 3 to 4 years. And I believe that was it on the minor capital side. So.
Thank you, Chief Goodhill. Did you have any comments you wanted to make, Chief Sutherland? Very good, sir. Okay, I'll let you carry on then, please. Trevor?
I will have one for Chief Sidlington. In here, there are 3 projects for minor bunker gear. I believe it's 2 sets. He has asked for an additional $2,000. We are sending a lot of new firefighters in for training, and they're being checked for all gear, and boots are outside the 10-year window. So there's a request to increase that from 10,000 to 12,000 because of the boots. So that's where that'll be. There's 60,000 in for Scott Air Packs. I can't answer the number. I believe, how many is that?
Chief, would you mind coming up? We're trying to share this with everybody, so I'll get you to come up and speak to it. You'd be so kind. So maybe Trevor, just back up and just specify that again, and then the chief can answer it.
Yep. We've spoken about bunker. The second one is Scott Air Packs. It's $60,000. I don't know how many it's for or anything. Chief can address that.
Yeah, so right now we have, we need 6 more 4,500 air packs to bring us up to par to everything. Right now, we've got a mixture of 45s and 2.2s. And the new mandate is that everybody has 4.5. So if I can get all of them, 6 more, I'm done with the 2.2s. And again, like Brad said with the bottles, you don't want to buy 20 bottles this year, because that means in 15 years, you got to buy 20 more. We buy so many a year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else? Yeah, Councilor Morris, question.
Yeah, Rick, what do you do with the old Scott Air Packs, the 2.5s? Are they any value?
Sorry. Sometimes you can donate them to a third world country or something like that, but the colleges, they used to give them to the colleges, but they won't take them anymore. Not with the new regulations, everything's gotta be proper years.
Anybody else have a question for Chief Sillington while he's up here? So, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Trevor, I'll let you carry on.
Five.
Huh?
Tab five. Tab five is Public Works. We've spoken about the major changes that we've brought forward in terms of gravel. One thing that you're gonna see come through later today, when we get to everything, regardless, we have a request on calcium. We go to tender every year for calcium. The provider that we had last year, he was 30% lower than anyone else, and I believe he was then 300% lower than the third lowest price, has offered to hold his price for next year. Staff have to go to tender unless directed by council to go direct. So please consider that because we like the price that we had last year. Other than that, does anyone else have any questions for Public Works?
Anybody have any questions on Public Works this time? Deputy Mayor Kellum.
The quality of gravel last year was to par.
I'm gonna look to the audience and go to Ray.
So maybe we'll ask you to do Ray. I know how much you love this. But maybe between, unless Kyle wants to answer it, again, he wasn't here, but you folks have probably spoke together. I mean, have spoken about this. Kyle, do you want to try to take that question?
So, thank you. The gravel standard is 60% fractured now. It's been lowered across the board. That seems to be the minimum they reach now. And there was no issues I was aware of on the quality of the gravel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions when it comes to Public Works at this time? You want to talk about the capital and Public Works at all that's being requested? Maybe just give us a snapshot of that, if you'd be so kind, Trevor.
In our recommendation list that you're gonna see at the end of it, we are gonna have several capital projects. The first one is required. It is the continuation of the Sunset Erie, St. Clair, John water main infrastructure. That includes addressing the drainage that's on the west side. Where we could go forward now, but just because it's in the budget to top up because of the change in drainage last year, we're bringing it back forward so everyone knows. It is the final pieces of the RFP are in place. And we expect to go out to hopefully be back with a recommendation of who to go with for 2025 construction for the March meeting. So we're that close on that. The next project, please bear with me, is Site 56, which is the emergent situation on Kings Court. There's three options to build as is for 377 is the quote to build as is, but with concrete anchors at both ends. I believe it takes it to 450. And then if we go to a concrete box, it's 500,000. I know what way I would go. I'm not the one who's making the decisions, but for a concrete box, which I think will have probably double the life of a steel culvert, we will hopefully get back some money from the Emergency Disaster Relief Fund to cover a portion of that. Anything additional outside of like for like, we will have to pay for. So just bear that. Then recommendations. We have Site 1 and Site 40, which were 50% funded last year. It's the second 50%. Burnham Line, First School Road to Navu. We're recommending completing that this year. It's 750,000 is preliminary numbers. That's to complete all the Burnham West to Forest. That'll get that portion done. And then 400,000 for Brickyard to complete it. Again, from Navu to Forest, it'll be completed. We have the catch basins in there at the request of Public Works, 80,000. I'd love to identify where each of them are. I trust Public Works. They know exactly where they are, and we will go from there. We have the Arcona Road overpass and approach, 50,000 to address Councillor Moore's question. Unless we know that there's been damage, we aren't getting a police report. Most people just leave rather than. The next project is First School Road, the box culvert replacement, again, 50,000. It's outside of the OSIM report because it's under 3 meters. So it's probably been needing repair for several years. Two thousand and ten backhoe replacement, 216,000. It's gonna fluctuate with the US dollar, just so that everyone's where we do have some price risk there. The one thing that we have going for us is Kyle has done some work with the provider. They will take a trade-in of our existing one for 36,000. So if we go with the 216, we will have roughly $36,000 to play with in terms of price fluctuation. Truck 397, it's the Freightliner replacement. We have 200,000 in there, which might be high for this year. We can't place an order without having some money in case we're asked for a deposit. So we've got at for 50% of what we expect it to be. We can go back and do more to bring that number down, and I think it could be a valid request. And then we also have a wood chipper of 92,000 that has been in and out several times. It's been a request, I believe, for 4 years, fourth year asking. If I go back and do an analysis, we have probably spent more on rentals and labor for one over the last 4 years due to the weather conditions than if we had owned one. We probably would have paid for it in whole. So it's just something to consider. Plus, we could have a secondary income. We could also sell the mulch, and weekend job for Ray and staff. So those are the capital projects. Everything else that was on the previous list will then fall into the backlog. If we go back and do a scrub to tighten pricing on the assets that we will talk about later, all iron, we might be able to come forward with another one that's in the backlog, and we will make that recommendation later.
Would you like to identify that particular item?
Truck 398 has been moved out into the backlog. For minimum maintenance standards, that's recommended that we replace our vehicles on. It's probably 2 years outside of it, but it's one that Public Works were giving up in order to get more culverts, roads, and repairs done that we've had for back-to-back seasons. So it's one that they pulled out, but it's one that would probably be dear to their heart that I'd recommend at that time.
So that is a pickup truck, am I
It's
correct?
a pickup truck.
Record so everybody knows. Everything's assigned a number, but just to be more specific. So, very good. Okay. Anybody have any questions? The capital, Council Morris.
Yeah, to start with, the wood chipper, of course, you know my opinion on it. Now, we put some money away on that wood chipper, last year or the year before? Yes, so you're asking for another 92,000 on top of the.
Total will be 92,000. So it'll be 20,000 put away last year.
Okay,
And 70.
all right. Now, can you explain to me the salt shed conveyor system? Did we have that before, and what is that?
Interesting question. We don't have it. It's not recommended. It's going into the backlog. But what it is we have a backhoe that goes in to pull salt out.
Mm-hmm.
It gets dissolved and goes outside of its minimum maintenance standards quickly because of the salt corroding it, regardless of how much you wash it. If you put a conveyor system in, you put that in, it's got more plastic rollers and gears. It lasts longer, and your main iron, which is your backhoe, will meet the minimum maintenance standards. So it's going to be a trade-off for one or the other.
But the conveyor system is worth 1/3 of the new backhoe.
No, it's a 3-year project. If you commit to it, it would be 300,000.
For the conveyor system.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm not committing on that one yet. The other thing is the tool storage system at the Warwick Garage. Can you explain that, please?
I'm going to turn to Kyle and Ray on that one.
This is allocation to replace shelving and storage for tools in the garage, so it's incremental over the years. It doesn't get you a complete system in one go. It buys shelving and replaces some of the racks in the garage itself.
Well, I got one last one here, and it was for, I gotta read my glasses on here. Guess it was 610,000 by the looks of it. For the Watford Garage, 2 new bays. How badly do we need this?
You want me to answer it? The two new bays have been pulled, they'll go into the backlog. At this point in time, it's not necessary because we found other storage solutions to tide us over for a few years. This was what was in there in the 20-year that came forward, but can't be pushed back.
Okay, that's all the questions I have on the major capital for the public works.
Does anybody else have? Councillor Manning, please.
Just to circle back to the wood chipper, just a couple quick questions. When you say labor, like when you're comparing the prices between rental and when we rent, we'll still pay the labor even if we own the machine. So that shouldn't actually be in there. Yeah, so and then number two on the same tool, what's the cost of insurance of owning one? You know what roughly that would be, how much that would increase?
I don't have an answer for that. It's something I can do some research on. I don't think it's going to be significant. I think it'll just go to a part of our fleet policy.
Right, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions on public works on the capital side or even on the operational side? Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Trevor, please continue.
Tab 6, environmental. It includes basically what we call environmental, which is the landfill asset, sewers, and water. Are there any questions on the operational side?
Not seeing any questions on the operational side this time. Trevor?
For the minor capital and capital, all projects in here except for two are recommendations from our provider, which is Aqua, of what needs to be done. They provide it to us on an annual basis. Minor capital, I believe there are, please bear with me, 5 ongoing projects in water, booster pump, motor rebuild, hydrant maintenance, which happens on an annual basis, completion of the building of a parts inventory, and then one that is us with Blue Water Power, the meter replacement program, which we allocate 50,000 so that old meters get taken back out because you have a higher failure rate with older meters. And then valve replacement. Those are the 5 for water. For sewer minor, we have alum system maintenance, effluent filter head maintenance, fixed sewer laterals, pump station cleanout, which I would assume is very important, weed spraying to stop weeds from going into various different beds and lagoons, and also $60,000, which we've put back in for the backflow prevention program at council's request from 2 years ago. We're carrying it forward until we're told not to.
Questions, council? Councillor Morse.
Now Jerry had mentioned earlier about the overflow from the pumping station. I'm gonna let you, Jerry, you go ahead.
I guess I'd like to see a little bit of money in to change the overflow from our pumping station. The way it is now, I don't believe the water comes out of the pumping station and into the ditch like it's supposed to. I think if it was just turned a little bit so it had some draw on it, instead of coming out and the water pushing it back in instead, it would have saved us a lot of problems during that big storm with sewers. Because right now, all it's doing is pushing water back out and there's no way it can free flow out.
My recommendation is to hold the budget as is. And us staff to work with Aqua to find a solution, find the money from within and defer another project so that gets completed. It's up to council though.
I don't believe it's a whole lot of money just to change it, the outlet. So the water will come out.
That's why I would like to hold.
Okay. Anybody else, council, would like to ask a question? Seeing none, we'll move forward. If we could then please, Trevor.
There are 2 major capital projects for sewer. One is to install a bar screen at raw discharge. They had it budgeted for 2024. I believe 140,000. When they went to tender, it came in at 225. So they pulled it and asked for it to go back into this year at 235. And the second one is a lagoon sludge removal. It's a 2-year project for $700,000, 350 over 2 years. If those two projects go ahead, just for council's knowledge, it will drain our sewer reserve. So we'll be basically down to less than $100,000. So information.
Does anyone on council have any questions on what was just mentioned by the treasurer? Deputy Mayor Callenberg.
Is there a certain standard or time frame that the sludge has to be removed, or is that just based on the report?
I believe it's based on a report and condition assessment done by Aqua to keep us compliant with all various licenses.
Follow up, Deputy Mayor. Very good. Anybody else? Council Westgate.
On the sludge removal, if we remove the sludge, all we're doing is making more room for water out there. And with the continuous flow, unless we have a real cold winter, because we can't let it go in the winter time, our one lagoon on the one with the sludge in it still handles it all, except for maybe 1 year when we had a whole lot of rain and snow in the winter time and maybe a late spring. So I'm not so sure we need to go ahead and do that now until we have more houses and need the storage.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Manning.
So you mentioned being in compliance with licenses. What's our what's our timeframe on that compliance? Like if we were to defer this another year, how long do we have? Where we will we lose our license in the next 2 years if we don't do this?
It would have to be a question we'll go back to Aqua on. Your license gets renewed annually based upon certain parameters. So it's not something that I have seen as been flagged. It was a shock when I first saw it this year. But we will go back and ask those questions.
Follow up, Council. Seeing none. Very good. Anybody else? Councillor Morris.
I guess one thing that concerns me a little bit is, okay, I agree with Jerry for now, but eventually this is gonna need to be done. I think we need to up our sewer rates then if our reserves are getting that low. Like if we ever did have something we needed to do right away if we're out of reserves. So should we be putting our sewer rates up, increasing them to build reserves back up again?
Valid question. Based on the report completed on sewer and storm reserves in 2019, we locked in a 10-year 5% increase. So for the next 10 years, or the balance of that, will be 5%. It's going to absorb it. We're still going to have a reserve. We're just not going to grow it. But we're doing the work that's necessary. So yes, it's a valid question, and the next study will flush, pardon the term, and it's not a pun on the music, it'll flush that out.
Sir Manning.
So how often are these sludge removals done? Like when was the last one done and how often are they usually done?
I believe this is the first one since that system's been in place.
So how long is that, how long has that system been in place? And if we were to do this one this year or whenever, when are we expected to have, like as Councillor Morrison mentioned, we got to build those reserves back up. When will we be expecting to spend that 700,000 again?
I'm going to look down 2 people from me to the right to Councillor Westgate, who I think has the answer.
Councillor Westgate, please.
Since I've been on council, we've talked about taking the sludge out of that lagoon, and the price has really gone down from what they talked about years ago. But we've redid the lagoon twice. We're right now, I think probably 60% capacity.
Not even that high.
So let's say 60%. We could put all the new homes that they're talking about and still have enough room for our sewage. Before we did the expansion to the lagoon with the pumping station and the continuous flow in the sand aerators, and then we needed to look at it. But if you go back there, that first lagoon, you could probably, it's only probably about 1 or 2 feet deep in lots of areas, and it's needed cleaned out for a long time. It catches a lot of the sludge before it goes into the system. So I would think we should leave that for a little while and maybe keep building up a reserve for it. maybe it'll never have to be used. There's new systems coming out all the time. I just talked to a guy down in Toronto at the convention about, putting these cells in that would take it all out instead of a lagoon system. So, I don't think it's anything we need to do now, but maybe with 10% we had on the sewers and stuff at the end, and with what we get in for connecting new systems, we should have enough to do it if we have to.
Thank you, Councilor Westgate. Anybody else want to get in on this one? Very good, thank you. Trevor, please continue.
Before moving on from there, my recommendation, even though we're not supposed to have a recommendation, is to probably to pull and have Aqua come back and educate council and staff in terms of the need for it and the timing. Then I think it'll address everyone's questions. Next,
Sounds reasonable. Is everybody okay with that direction at this time? Very good. Thank you, Trevor.
next section is health services, which for us is our cemeteries,
Good sentence, okay.
section 7. Are there any questions on anything in here?
Any operational capital wise, anybody have any questions on the cemetery? Yes, Councilor Westgate.
There was 20,000 put in to fix the building out there. What had you planned on doing? Just a new floor and patch the walls, or exactly what was the plan there?
I believe it's going to be to fix the floor with concrete and also repoint the building, the walls.
Thank you. I think that sounds reasonable. We need to get using it again. It's just sitting there and it's a good building. It just needs a little bit of work. And the floor is terrible.
Very good. I'll ask one more time. Anybody else have any questions on tab 7, cemeteries? Before we move on. Okay, Trevor, please move on.
Tab 8 is Parks and Recreation. And are there any questions in the operation side before we go to minor then capital?
Anyone on the operational side at this time? Question before we get into capital, as Trevor said? Seeing none. Trevor, let's get into the capital if we could.
Okay, on the minor side, there are 9 projects that are listed. A nice edger for $8,000, YMCA equipment reserve, $10,000. It's not going to go anything other than sit in a reserve, so that when we do need to replace equipment, because it does have an end life, you do not have to have a annual tax increase. That's going to be astronomical. Just pull from the reserve. Parks, furniture and signage, 5,000. Christmas light renewal in Warwick Village. It's going to be to match what's in Watford. Then 15,000 for the Old Fire Hall Museum work. It's a constant upgrade of work that's happening there. There is a list of projects Ryan has that'll go into that. Library furnace replacement, $6,500. Library interior improvements, the big cost there being the accessibility counter, it's $10,000. Library foundation wall engineering, we're gonna have to find out what that's gonna cost, so we better have current engineering to tell us what that project's gonna be. So we have 25 in there. And then the last one, which isn't on your original list, but item I added is the ELCC bar sink. Any questions?
Anybody? Any questions? Yes, Councilor Morris.
Just a little more information. The rec committee strongly recommended these changes. The only question we had was the $6,000 for lights for Warwick Village. Whether it can be done, because Blue Water Power does it here in Watford, but that is Ontario Hydro. And Ryan's still waiting for an answer on whether Ontario Hydro will even allow it. So I think we need to leave, I'd like to see the money left there under the condition that it can be done.
Ryan, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, through you to Councilor Morris. Yeah, correct. We're working through some back channels, trying to get all the information ducks in a row, just to ensure that we can in fact move forward on that project. When I get that information and we know better on whether or not we can proceed and how we proceed and what that plan might look like, I can certainly report back, through council, through the, Parks and Recreation Committee, and kind of move forward from there. But, I agree. I do like keeping that in there, just for the sake of, should we be able to move forward, being able to have those funds to move on it.
Thank you, Ryan. Does anybody else have any questions on the capital side? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with a $10,000 sink for a bar. Seems a little steep. And the other comment, you made a comment earlier about the kitchen being locked, but the ice maker is also in the kitchen and the bar uses the ice maker as well, so.
I said it properly should be locked, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay, I'm assuming that you did some research on that and did some homework on that. Ryan, if I could ask you?
Yes, thank you. That is the exact number from a quote that we received from a plumbing company to do that work. They do have to do a little bit of digging, breaking up the floor inside the bar area, which I think is a big piece to the cost, being able to connect into the drain properly. But yes, there's no doubt that is a substantial amount. Can always continue to get another quote and see what we can do and sharpen that number a little bit. But I do think it's an important service, piece of equipment to have in that space for sure.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Deputy Mayor? Anybody else have any questions? I just will say that I think we should also leave that money in for Warwick Village. Try to get something done out there when it comes to the Christmas lights. I agree 100% with that. I'm going to take us back just quickly. We're talking about Warwick Village. There is, we've already dealt with Public Works, but I'm going to take us back for a second. There is some much needed work there. We talked about doing that intersection work and stuff like that for sidewalk repair as well. So I just want to make a note of that. I know there's a budget in here for sidewalk, but while we're being specific to the village, there is some need for some sidewalk repair there as well. So I just wanted to mention that. Forgot to mention that when we were dealing with that particular piece. So I'll turn it back over to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor Case. Going into the major capital components, as we said, we're going forward out of the 5 projects before requesting for an ice resurfacer, $75,000 this year, which we believe is half of what is required. We will tighten that number. It's more than a 1-year delivery date. So we have to have money in place to put the order in. And the second one is a modular all-wheel skate park. That also includes the accessible playground. And it might be that the accessible playground is the part that comes forward, but they have 2 grants. I want money in for, or we've made a recommendation for money for the larger of the 2 projects, which kind of incorporates it. And depending on the success of the grants, we will come back to council and recommit at that time. It might be that we don't have money to complete either if we don't get success on the grants. And then we will look to put that into a reserve to build upon for next year so it can get delivered. So that's our idea.
Councilor Morris.
Yeah, again, the Parks and Rec Committee went through these and had a great presentation from the planner. What I wanted to ask, so everybody understands, the numbers of 250,000 for the modular all-wheel skate park and 400,000 for the accessible playground. That's total, is it not, Ryan? Not including anything we could receive from grants?
Essentially. Do you want to get that?
The modular all-wheel skate park is 550,000. So that doesn't include the grant portion.
Anybody else? Questions? If not, I do have one. I struggle with this a lot, to be very honest with you. These are big ticketed items. We've done an awful lot on the recreation side in the last few years. And I guess with the other needs that we have, and no disrespect to Ryan, he put this report together and I appreciate it being put on our radar screen. Because if you don't know about it, I mean, then you can't even plan for the future. I do struggle with this a little bit, not so much with the Zamboni, to be very honest with you. That's something I feel strongly that we really need to take a real firm look at. You can't be without your Zamboni, and if you are, then you start renting them, and then your costs go up, and you got to buy one, and you got to wait. So I think that's being proactive. But the other projects, I mean, if we knew, and there's no crystal ball to know if we're going to get the grant dollars or not, it makes it tough. So Trevor, I guess my question is, those dollars are not incorporated into this budget when you talk about the 5%. Am I correct?
No, you're correct. I believe I understood your question. Yes, you're correct.
Very good. Thank you. It's always good to have it on the radar screen. It's important, but Councillor Manning.
Just out of curiosity, kind of, these are hinging on these grants. What's the shelf life on the grants? Like if we were to reapply for those grants next year, or the year after, is there a time limit on the application, or are these yearly?
From the time, if we were successful in the grant, you have 24 months from the time that you're successful and sign the grant to complete the project.
I understand that you've applied for the grants now, but even regardless of success now, if we were to either withdraw that application or be unsuccessful, can we reapply next year? Can we reapply the year after? Or is this a limited time grant that we're looking at?
I will turn that over to Ryan.
Thank you. There will always be grants available. I definitely wouldn't recommend pulling it. I would still let it run its course and see where you're at. I think that would look, I don't think that would be the optics that we would want. But both funding applications that we've applied for are generally available on an annual basis. So if we were unsuccessful, we certainly could reapply next year through that same funding stream, so long as it's there. But as I mentioned, these two programs generally are annual available funding sources.
Any follow-up, Councillor Manning, on that one? Very good, thank you. I would agree what Ryan just said. As much as the big price tag items, it wouldn't be the first time that a municipality actually got approval for a grant where the municipality said, you know what, thank you, we can't quite afford it this year. So that's always the option. Just because you get the grant doesn't mean you have to take it. So I think pulling it out would look very sort of unprofessional, and we put the time in. I think it would be more well received if we said, you know what, thank you, we appreciate it. We can't afford it this year, but then you're back next year. So it's not like you're just wasting anybody's time. So I agree with that as well. Any other questions? Councillor Morris.
I guess one thing if I understood right, Ryan, we have 2 years to come up with the money for this grant, so we could actually not put anything in the budget this year. And if the grants were successful, then as Todd has said, we can put money in next year on the same application.
Essentially, yes, that is true.
Very good. That's great information. Like I say, it's always good to have in front of us to understand, you know, what the needs are and what the Recreation Board is looking at. But again, like I say, I struggle somewhat. I look at the iron we need for our public works. And I also know we're in very good shape at recreation. And we just received a grant this year, thanks to Ryan's hard work, about $54,000. And that was absolutely terrific. But I look at what the needs are, public works, the fire departments, and that's where it gets a little tough. But I do agree, as I already stated, I do agree with not pulling it and just see what happens. And sometimes those timelines actually do work and work for us. So appreciate the effort, Ryan. Anybody else have any questions? Councillor Westgate.
Just like to say, I agree with Mayor Case. I think $500,000 could be spent much better out in the roads or someplace else. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And again, I'll go back to the Zamboni. Again, we're going to get into this a little further when we want to go through the taps. But I do think that is something maybe that we really need to consider this time around. And maybe when it comes to asking for 50% up front, I did have the chance to have a chat with Ryan about this. Sometimes negotiation is negotiation. Maybe the company would be happy with 25% down, which maybe softens the blow a little bit. And again, that would be up to Ryan to go back and negotiate with them. But just because somebody asks for something in this world today doesn't mean you can't negotiate. Maybe do it for less. Maybe you can't, but it is an opportunity. Trevor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Winding down, we're now in number 9 tab, planning and development. Do we have any specific questions? The one thing I will tell you is, I think it's 723, which is tile loans. We have retired our last tile loan. We will continue to offer them to residents, but they can get better rates at the bank.
Questions? Tab number 9, council. Any? Seeing none. Trevor, please move forward.
In there are two minor capital projects under development. The first one is the annual CIP funding for grants for residents that fit into one of our 6 CIP programs. We're asking for 25,000. The second one is a CIP program relaunch. The CIP committee have worked to identify other initiatives that are now being rolled out at other communities that are like us. And this is to basically make our CIP program a lot more user-friendly so that residents can read it and have more programming brought in. We don't have anything that addresses agribusiness, and we have nothing that really addresses affordable housing. Thank you. This will bring in those 2 programs. It'll rewrite it and marriage the 2, whereby if you have a apartment above building, you can do that for affordable housing, and it's going to be something that's going to look good in the future. So that's why we're doing it. We're planning it to be done by, it has to be done by a planner, essentially. We've got a quote. The quote came in at 21,000. We have 25 in there. And just so you know, it's a year 1 to year 3 strat plan deliverable for this council. That's why we've brought it forward in the year 3 of your term.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this? And I know Stephanie put some working on this as well. Maybe a question for Stephanie, if anybody wanted to, not to put her on the spot. Any questions on that particular initiative this time? Seeing none? Very good. Thank you. Please continue, Trevor.
Okay, our last tab is lighting. Watford and Warwick streetlights. Essentially, what we do is a 5-year rolling average of that. You will see it change because the 2024 actuals were significantly different, and it's the first time in my 8 years here that has been different. So next year it'll change. This year we went with what we have. Basically, the more revenue, the more cost. That's all I can tell you on it.
Questions? Seeing none? Very good. Trevor?
So that's where we're at. So essentially, I gave a list in my presentation of 4.8 and where the money would come from. There is a list in the council package of projects, and it's broken down into 4 categories. Required: Sunset, Erie, St. Clair, John, water main, $500,000. It ties into an ICNP green. It's our portion. Total, that's a $3.2 million project. And office furniture, it's a capital lease. We got it at 3 years, no interest, so we took advantage of that option. This will be the last year. Emergent, there are 2 projects in there. Site 56 Kings Court and the Watford Cemetery Building rehabilitation for 20,000. So it's 377 we have for Kings Court. But it's council direction whether or not they want to leave it at that or enhance it to another option. Then we have from sewer reserves, bar screen at raw discharge for 235, and also the lagoon sludge removal, the 2-year project, 350 this year. My feeling of council's opinion is to pull that, but I'm not going to put words in their mouth and investigate once we have Aqua come in and do more education and information to the group. Recommended Site 1, Hickory Creek, and that is a culvert repairs, guardrail installation upgrade, and marker signs. It'll be roughly 96,000. Goes with the 96 that was put away last year to cover it. Site 40, Bethesda Road, concrete repairs, install steel beams, guide rails, and markers. That'll be 42.25. So the total of that is 84,500 for a 2-year project. Burnham Line, 750,000. Brickyard, 400,000. Catch basins, 80,000. Arcona Road, 50,000. First School Road box culvert replacement for the small culvert, 50,000. Again, those come off quotes from contractors, so they're not pie in the sky. The cat replacement, 216. Truck 397, the Freightliner replacement, it's a 2011. So by the time we get that truck, it will be probably 16 to 17 years old, and it's well past its minimum maintenance standards. That's 200,000. We've got the ice resurfacer. I'm not going with a model or a brand name. I'm just calling it an ice resurfacer. 75,000 for this year. Wood chipper of 92,000. 200,000 for the fire rescue vehicle in order to get the order in place. And then the Centennial Park modular all-wheels skate park for 300,000. Depending on grants, that will move forward or will go into reserves if we are unsuccessful in grants. Everything else that was presented in the draft will then fall back into the backlog and be brought forward in 2026 or further budget deliberations based upon immediacy of need. And with that, I turn it over to council.
So I guess the first question, or maybe the first, we need to clarify. So all of those things you have just mentioned, Trevor, are they included in the 5% tax increase at this time, or are some of those things to be added or subtracted? I mean, obviously, we have the option to subtract at all times in our talks and our deliberations, but is that all those items included in the 5%?
Those will all be included, and it would require us to draw down general reserves by $665,000.
That's what I thought. Questions, council? Council Morris.
Guess I want to back up a little bit here and go to minor capital under the general government. Like, we're sitting here, we're talking a lot of money, which we don't have. I don't think we need a pay equity study and a pay standard study and a SharePoint migration study this year, and that would save us $65,000. I just wanted to get that out there.
The SharePoint migration is an ongoing project. We've done, I believe, 2 components of our 8 or 9 that are required, and this is to take it forward. Right now, we had a hack at the county level whereby data was breached. This will move it into a more secure system,
Okay.
which is primarily what it is. As for the equity standards, we are coming into a year whereby we have negotiations with union, and I think this is going to be good research going into those.
Yeah, I understand the union negotiations, but I don't think we need a pay equity study and a pay standard study for $40,000 this year when everything's so tight. I'm gonna stand by what I say. I don't think it's needed, and we went with Ray on a great tour. I don't know, do we have to have another $25,000 into a road study? We haven't fixed what we did the last road study. I just look at, there's $65,000 that we can not take out of reserves, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Councilor Morris. Anybody else have any comment on that those particular items? Councilor Manning?
I definitely agree with the road study. I mean, we can keep studying them. We know they need to be fixed. I think at this point, it's just start fixing them. And that money can be used to fix the ones we've already got backlogged. So I don't see the point of studying if we're not going to do anything about it. So I definitely could scratch that for you.
Anybody else want to get in on this one? Okay. So those comments have been made. Trevor?
I'm fine. We'll make those notes.
Very good. So we are at the point now, we've gone through the book and we've asked lots of questions, and I'm sure there'll even be more questions after today. I don't know where council wants to go next, but I do have a suggestion. This is an important year. Every year is important. We look at budget. This year, there's lots of challenges. I did have an opportunity to talk to the treasurer and the CAO a little bit about this. And some of these things are more time sensitive than others. When we look at things like going out for RFP for Burnham Line, Brickyard Line, the Sunset Erie St. Clair John project, site 56, Kings Court, and the culvert replacement. And I know we haven't talked about what model we really want when it comes to it, but I think it would be good business for us to put an RFP out for these things. Again, we got to talk about the culvert that we want for Kings Court. We should have that discussion before we leave today. But I think they're timely things and we need to take care of them sooner than later to make sure we get the best price possible. So this is my discussion with the treasurer and the CAO. And it makes a lot of sense to try to be proactive when it comes to this stuff to get the pricing out there perhaps. So that's just a suggestion. I don't know how the rest of council feels about that, but it gives us an opportunity to get out there. And what I was going to suggest, council, and of course I want discussion on that. I'm not suggesting we're done with that. I guess my other thought would be to table the rest of this budget to our next regular meeting on February 3rd. And I'll tell you why I'm thinking this. Again, discussion with staff was part of this. We have talked about a new ice surfacer. We haven't decided on a model. Ryan's recommendation is to go to an E model, which I have no issue with myself personally, but it's something we need to discuss. Maybe a little more research done on. And our fire truck. Really, in all honesty, we haven't even had given the fire chiefs the opportunity to work and spec those trucks out yet. So again, a little bit more research, maybe that can be had before February 3rd, looking, in the direction of the firefighters along with our staff. And I think maybe it would even be prudent to put a counselor on a committee to set up a committee to look at that and bring that back. I don't know how quick we can do that, but I don't disagree with replacing our fire fleet. We need to do it. We put some money away last year. These are just my thoughts. I think that's important. So, and of course, when it comes to our trucks and our fleet for public works, it's important as well. I think we need to get that done sooner than later as well. But again, we talk about, again, with the fire department, we talk about rescue vehicles and we talk about truck 397. That's the 2011 Freightliner and also the public works vehicles that are needed as well. So again, just my suggestion, and I want to hear from everybody on how they feel about this, that we go ahead and put the RFPs together for those items I mentioned first, get them out there, and hopefully we can get good pricing by getting it out there early. Again, in saying that, we still haven't settled on a model when it comes to Kings Court, the culvert replacement, it's the concrete or the traditional culvert. And again, the recommendation is to complete Burnham line, the rest of it, and also to complete the rest of Brickyard instead of doing it in more phases. I personally like the idea of getting them done. We went for other roads tour. It's been mentioned many times today. It was very educational for all of us. We got to see the issues and the concerns from our public works department, and very, very valid. We have a lot of work to do. We all know that. There's a lot of money that needs to be spent. So it'd be nice to get those two other projects out of the way. So that's just my thought process on that. And I guess maybe I open it up for discussion if I could. Anybody on council like to weigh in on this? Deputy Mayor?
I would like to include the Arcona Road overpass, get pricing on that as well.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Morris.
Churchill has been put on the back burner for a couple of years now. We put money away and they were working for a study on Churchill. Is it going to be done in 2025?
I'll put that question back to staff. I don't know who wants to answer it. Kyle?
I don't have an answer for you this time. I'll have to look into it. I know they were doing a geotechnical study of the road base and I haven't seen the final results from that yet.
Okay.
There is money put away for that. It's sitting in special reserves
Okay.
allocated for that. So when it's ready to go, we'll bring it forward and dust it off.
Okay, so that should be part of the further discussion that I may be suggesting we have, not to just close this off today. Obviously, there's some homework to be done. Councilor Manning.
Yeah, if we if council decides to defer this to the February 3rd meeting, I would also, if possible, like to have some information from Aqua on that lagoon sludge, because that seems to be one that we're kind of in the middle on, and that's a huge number. That could make a lot of difference. A lot of projects we don't put up with it.
Thank you, Councilor Manning. That's a good point too. So again, I'm going to take us back and have a conversation. We don't have to make the decision today, but again, if we're going to put the RFP out, we need to decide on the model. Can we have a discussion about Kings Court and what council's preference is when it comes to that culvert, whether it's concrete or traditional? Does anybody want to get in on this right off the bat? Councilor Morris, then Councilor Westgate?
The farmers I've talked to were satisfied with what was there before. Now, I don't know about the longevity or how long it'll last or anything. But, there's the steel culvert, then the steel culvert with cement blocks or whatever that means. I don't think we need a concrete one. First of all, that'll hold the system. That's a long time to build that. Like it seems to be the road to be out of service a long time. So I'd like to look at the first two options, but I don't know what the difference is between an ordinary steel culvert and one with the cement blocks or whatever.
You, Counselor Westgate.
Well, I think we've already had it washed out once, so there's no use putting back in what was there and having it wash out again. If we're gonna keep that road open, and I've heard talk about just closing the road, we may as well spend another 30,000 and put the concrete one in, and then it's gonna be there forever. Or gonna be there for a lot longer than the steel culvert going in. And it's gonna do a lot better job for us, and it's not gonna wash us away near as easy.
Counselor Manning.
Yeah, this is a little different. I mean, not so much for the longevity, but was there any, in the reports that we had from our engineers, was there any indication that the steel culvert versus the concrete culvert will change the flow of the water and help us with another issue, the drainage issues we have?
Who would like to take this one? Kyle, would you like to take this?
I'd just like to add a couple points to that. So upstream of that steel culvert are concrete culverts on that same waterway. And a lot of the drainage improvements we're working on will increase the flows through this water course. So that at one point in that direction, concrete culverts are used upstream of it, and this is the only steel one. When we talked to Spreed about the condition of it, they believe it was the road itself washing away around the culvert, and that's what led to the failure, not the failure of the culvert itself. So if you have a concrete box, you'll gain structural integrity if another large rain event occurs. So the box section will stay. So I don't have an exact number on how much it will improve the flow, but you'll have far more resilient structure in its place if we have another large rain event. And a lot of our drainage in town, almost all of it, goes through that water course. And a significant amount of the farmland around it as well ends up in that water course through that waterway.
Thank you, Kyle. Anybody else have any comment or question? I'm looking for consensus. Yes, Councilor Morris.
The only thing I would ask then if we go culvert or cement, which makes a good point, is we get it in as early as possible. The farmers have been inconvenienced and people using that road have been inconvenienced now since, was it August, wasn't it, was taken out? July 22nd. So I'd like to, whatever we do, I don't want to have it on, oh, it won't be done till next October kind of a thing. They put up with a lot of inconvenience. I'd like to see it done as soon as possible.
Councilor Westgate.
When we're talking concrete box culvert, are we talking precast coming in and being put together, or are you talking poured? If it's a precast coming in, then it shouldn't take long to put it in.
Our plan would be to go to precast. I don't have a lead time for you to reference, but I can work to get one as soon as possible.
Very good. Thank you. So again, I guess I'm not pushing the fact that we need to make that decision today, but the sooner we get RFP out, I don't know. It's also, there might be an opportunity to ask for them to price both models and then it can come back. Councilor Westgate.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead with the concrete one and get it done. That road's been washed out for a long time now. It's about time we did it.
I'll second that motion.
Second by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That's carried. So that would be, we would put the RFP out as soon as possible and get that out there for the pricing. The other items I listed, and I'll just go over them again, and this was with discussion with staff, just so everybody knows. To maybe get the RFPs out was the completion of Burnham Line and Brickyard. Get them done. And then the Sunset Erie St. Clair John project. That's a huge project for which we've received some pretty good funding on. That funding does have to be used up by 2026. this will also go a long way in helping us with our drainage issue and our water situation. So those were the ones, and of course, the other one we need to do, the extra gravel is in here. I don't want to forget about that. I did mention that a minute ago. I think that RFP needs to go out as well. Trevor, please.
Subsequent to this, and we spoke about it before in my presentation, I'd also like to add calcium in there to sole source to the 2024 contractor. I like the price. That's just me being cheap.
So then obviously we wouldn't have to go out for an RFP though. So that's a separate issue. I do have that in my notes here that to come back and circle back with council if they're okay with that. The 11 cents, I believe is what it is, which is a very good price. So council, just not trying to rush this through, but timing is everything when you're pricing jobs. Any questions about the list that I just suggested we put out? We would need a motion to proceed. Just Councillor Manning is,
Just out of curiosity, if we were to put out the RFPs, how fast would we expect to turn around on a price? Because that could give us some ideas for the budget too, right? Where we're sitting on the cost of these projects.
We're probably looking March before we get back the closing.
thank you. Councillor Westgate.
We're putting out for prices. We may as well add gravel to it too, because it's always nice to get out and get the gravel done early.
Yes, that's added. That was one of my suggestions too, that we do that with the extra that's been asked to start to work on the other side of Brickyard Line where there's so many issues. So that is included in there. Anybody have any more questions on that? Get those things done and go from there. Everybody's good with that? All in favor? Well, we didn't have a motion. Could we have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Deputy Mayor and Councillor Morris, further discussion if any. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Where does council want to go at this particular time? Is there anything else you'd like to take into back today? Yes, Councillor Morris.
I'd like to discuss the rescue vehicles if we could for a minute. No, Trevor, the price of one rescue unit was 600,000, we guesstimate, I believe.
It's come down. It is roughly 600. Last year was 800, but the market softened. The lead time is still 18 months to 2 years.
And how much have we got in reserve we put away last year?
You put away $150,000 plus whatever savings we were gonna have on the building. I haven't closed off the year on construction yet.
I guess what I'm thinking a little bit is our fire departments, if I understand right, chiefs, through the daytime respond together anyway. I think it's very important to get one of these vehicles at least replaced. I don't want to sit here and wait another 2 years, putting so much money away to get two. I'd like to see us go ahead and get one. Where it goes, I'll leave that to somebody else. But get one that can respond 24/7. Because the guys have made the point very clearly that these things might not make it out of the shed. So I think it's important to get one ordered because it's going to be, like you said, a 2-year program or year and a half to get one. So I think we should do that.
So one is a 1999 and one is a 2000. I believe I'm correct on that, chiefs. Yes. So good points. And it's something obviously that we just need to know what exactly they're speccing. We also have to consider the US dollar, which was mentioned earlier, and the way things are going, but I don't disagree with that. I think it's time that we start to upgrade the fleet and get things replaced. And I don't see anybody here disagreeing with that at this time. The reason I suggested that we bring it back is that really, in all honesty, we need to let the fire folks decide on a model. And I think it's important to remember that the other one is only a year difference. I don't even know which one's in the best shape, but best condition. Just because they're a year apart doesn't mean anything at this point in time. And I think maybe that's something we're going to be talking about next year at this time. But I do agree with you, Councillor, and the fact that we need to start moving forward. It takes a lot of time to get these ordered, and we've heard the chiefs. Does anybody have any issue with the comments that were made by Councillor Morris? No issues at all. So again, it's just a matter of I guess I'll ask the chiefs, and they're not near the microphone. Have we agreed on a spec at this particular time? I know I'm going to have to ask you to come back up to the microphone here again, but I mean, or I can just ask you, have you guys agreed on a spec that's the same spec for both departments at this time? So chiefs, if we said, would it be possible? If we table this budget today, that you'd be able to get that done by February 3rd, not putting pressure on you, but you've done. So our next meeting, our next regular meeting. Well, pardon me, the clerk is saying that she needs it by January 31st for the agenda. So will you be ready to be able to come to council on February 3rd with that? It's not absolutely necessary. That's not a problem. It's just a question. I know you've done some work on it. That's the reason I asked. So, okay, so we can, anybody else have any questions on this particular item? Yes, Trevor.
I think they can work on that, but I also think that regardless, it's going to be a 2-year process to get a vehicle. To satisfy Councillor Morris' request, we've gotten one in. If we left 300,000 in the budget for one, it would cover at least the prepayment, which my understanding, and I can be corrected by the chiefs, you have to cover the cost of the chassis upon ordering. Then you have one, and it gives them time to bring it back with a more wholesome build up for it, see exactly what it's going to cost, but 300 satisfy.
I appreciate that's a good point. And with what we put in last year and the savings on the other fire hall, even though you haven't closed it off, it was substantial for the repairs on the Watson station. So I think we can feel comfortable and confident that we've got the money. So we don't have to raise any other cash this time. Not that it's a bad idea. Put some more money into the reserves when it comes to fire, because we have a lot of other purchases going. So is everybody kind of okay with that particular item right now? As we said, we got to give the guys an opportunity to decide what they want to do. But good discussion. Anything else on this one? Okay. Is there anywhere anybody would like to go again on the budget today? Is there any questions within the book? Any questions for the treasurer? Any question for our managers, our fire chiefs? Anything else for today? Okay. So we've already decided to put the RFP out for those items we mentioned earlier. If there's no other questions today, we do have a little bit of work still to do in the budget process. And I'm always a firm believer, sometimes it's good to have a little bit of time to get back in the book and rethink things. And there is some other information that we've asked for. Councillor Manning made a good point. More information from Aqua on the particular situation there with the lagoon. I am prepared at this time, if there's no other questions, to make a tabling motion to table this until February 3rd. That's our regular meeting. It's not an extra meeting, for which we can get back into the budget at that time for the items that we have not discussed or any other items that we want to add or cut at that time. Is there a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Councillor Morris. And there's no discussion on the tabling motion. So I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So that will end our budget deliberations for today. We revisit it again on February 3rd. Some of the information that is outstanding, staff will put together for us. And that gives the opportunity for us to revisit this again and, have the opportunity to think it through again if there's any other questions or anything we'd like to see. So everybody's good with that? Very good. So we'll end that discussion at this time. Pick it up again on February 3rd. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So this is the end of our public portion of our meeting today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to everybody who attended in person and who attended through our YouTube page. I am now going to ask for a motion to move into an in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act for the following reasons. A matter regarding personnel matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. A trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which if disclosed could reasonably affect the organization. And the last one is a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried carried on behalf of the municipality or local board. Can I have a motion? That's a lot to say, Madam Clerk. Counselor Manning, no, I will not. Counselor Manning is moving it and seconded by Counselor Morris. All in favor? That's great.